That was a long time ago. Let's see. I think the first memory of me going to IIT BHU was getting on the back of a large army truck from the railway station and being dropped off at the corner of, I think it was Dhanraj Giri Hostel, and dragging my bags and trying to find my way around. Probably the first time, like many of you, I'd left home and I was going to go live by myself. So I think all the excitement and nervousness all together, and trying to figure out how to start that part of our life or our journey. And I'm sure all of you guys have had that experience more. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop saying it was a long time ago, because it was a long time ago. You folks won't remember those days, but at that point in time, I think it was the first year we had a computer science batch at ITBHU in '85, and I think we still had a fourth-year batch and a fifth-year batch over there at that point in time. I think the very early days, our first programming class was on something called an ICL 1904. That was a computer. You could probably see that in a museum somewhere, but you actually had to go to a punch card lab where you would hand over your code, which was written on a piece of paper, to the punch card operator, who would then type it, and really cards that were punched with holes in it would come out of it. And then you would take that stack of cards and you would go to the computing center and give it to the computer operator, who would put it in there. And the next day at 5 o'clock, you'd get a large green printout, which would print out your code and the output of your code. Now, as you can imagine, there's a possibility that the punch card operator didn't type it right. So you'd find out that it didn't type the code right, so you'd have to go back and do it again. Or you wrote your program wrong, which is also possible, and you'd get the wrong outcome. So stuff that you do in under a minute on your computer today took us 2.5 days, and we'd all sit there and wonder, why are we doing this? This is way more complicated, and you weren't writing complicated programming at that point in time. So that was my very first experience of programming at ITBHU. Thankfully, by the time 1989 came around, we used to have one PC-AT. I know you guys don't understand the terminology. It was a computer with a small hard drive where you could use a program called Database 4, perhaps. And you could actually type it in there. It would give you the outcome, which is, oh my God. So that was an early day experience of trying to get involved with computing in 1985 to 1989. Part of what is so fascinating is that we all get inspired by our early experiences, and our curiosity gets driven by that. What we worry about, what we think about gets inspired by that. So I still remember fondly the early days where all of us would sit down together and try and figure out what can we showcase from a research perspective, from a technology perspective, given our limited resources, I would say. I think relative to many parts of the world, be in India, when we were there, we had limited resource, and you had to go borrow lab time, you had to get your professors involved, get their input. But I think, what do we say, necessity is the mother of invention, or when you resource constrain something, you get more innovation. I think it was just amazing to see, and continues to be amazing, what great ideas come out of TechNext. And I think that is something which is unique to ITBHU. And I'm sorry, I say ITBHU, I still remember I went to ITBHU, you guys go to IIT-BHU. So it was unique from our times, and I think that's a phenomenal tradition that should continue for sure. Up in India, it's probably historical, religious, or however we get brought up. We have this notion that you have to get all your studying done in your life, and then you go to work. The rest of the world has adapted that slightly more, and there is a notion that why don't you study, go work, try and see what's interesting, what's not interesting, and then go back and study. So this may not be fitting for all our friends in India, but look, there is a lot of virtue to spending some time working and seeing how you apply what you've learned out of university the first time around, and then use that as a springboard to decide what you really want to do thereafter from a studying perspective. And of course, some of us are Some of us are luckier. We're inspired when you're young. We want to become a doctor, and it takes a certain amount of effort to get to medical school and get through it and be a specialist or something. Or some people wake up one morning and say, I'm going to be an astronaut, and it's going to take me 20 years to be that person. Or I'm going to discover the next, I get the next Nobel Prize, which is great. In which case, you keep studying and don't stop. But for many of us other people who actually want to go into the workforce, I think it's worthwhile taking a break after you're done with your first degree, getting some experience, real life, and under your belt, and then going out and seeing, what do I want to do, and where is the best place for me to be able to do that. You'll learn more, you'll contribute more, hopefully you'll be happier. That's a loaded question. Um, because if you knew everything back then you wouldn't be as intuitive, risk-taking, and foolhardy as we are when we're younger. So I don't think I would change that. I think it's important for us to not know everything and think we know everything when we're younger. That just gives a lot of confidence to all of us. That allows us to do crazy stuff. And you look around the world, all these wonderful companies being started by graduates of IIT, BHU, of various technological institutions around the world, in the West. I think all that innovation is a consequence of youth unwilling to accept status quo, unwilling to accept the rules that they have to play with to some degree, and trying to break the ceilings or break the boundaries. And I think that only comes from not knowing everything. So I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't want to go back and know something then, which would probably have colored my life and changed my life, and I would end up in a different place. So I think I love the fact that all of you are out there, young, innovating, inspired, and trying to make things different. I've been blessed that my early days at IIT BHU allowed me to go out there in the world and have some very interesting roles in my life. And I've always wanted to give back, and I've been struggling trying to figure out what's the most effective way to give back to the next generation. And as I toyed with the idea, and I've talked to various people at the institute and around the world, and I realized that I could give back to the institute and build more infrastructure. But that's the role of the institute. They should be building infrastructure because that's what they do. But I wanted to give back to the students. And I think there are so many smart, inspired young students out there. And it's important that, but part of it is that very smart people are aspiring to become engineers at IIT BHU. And it's important that they shouldn't get constrained in their learning for the lack of ample financial resources. So we've initiated a gift. I have tried to rally other alumni to contribute to the same scholarship. My aspiration is that anybody who needs financial aid at IIT BHU should be able to get it, so they can concentrate on their studies and go out there and change the world. Word, fascinating, interesting. That's not one word. Fascinating and interesting. I've always tried to keep that same foolish behavior of when I was young. I was tried new things and try to put myself into circumstances and see if I can make them work. And I've had the privilege and pleasure of working in Germany, in Japan, in India, in the United States. I've had pleasure working in consumer internet, in telecom, in enterprise security. So I think the way I think about it is that I've tried to make sure I'm constantly learning. I try to make sure that I'm constantly having fun. And I try to find a balance between living my life and working. And, that's the way I like to describe it. I don't think of my professional career, because we were not put on this earth to have a professional career. We were put on this earth to, I'm not sure why we were put on the earth. That's a different philosophical conversation. But we should just live our life, enjoy it, and make sure we're having fun, and we're getting a sense of achievement and accomplishment. And whatever gives you that sense of achievement and accomplishment is what you should do. That's a great question, Niti. I think the world has transcended from us learning just in universities or in the workplace. I run across so many smart young people who have somehow an inner curiosity, and they don't worry about going from 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. to a class, or whenever it starts, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the class, and get that less than for an hour, because today, with the amount of resources that are available in the world for you, whether you want to watch a video on YouTube or you want to watch a course on, that MIT has put out, or you want to watch, or you want to go learn programming on a BHU's or whatever, in White Rabbit, whatever in India is, or similar places here, you can do that. So you're no longer constrained to be educated in a linear fashion. Like we were constrained. We had to go to the library, get the book, and go to class from 8 to 12. You missed that class, you didn't know what's going to happen. You couldn't go back and watch a video. You had to go beg your colleagues or your friends for notes. Today, you can learn anything you want from the best professors in the world by possibly typing it on some education platform or on YouTube. So I think what that has done is it has required everyone to have more inner curiosity and want to learn. And I think that is possibly making younger people smarter, at least than us people, the older generation. And probably you guys are going to innovate much faster than we did. So I think all I will say is, if you want to enhance your education, be it technical or any kind, you have to develop inner curiosity, which means you should work on something that you want to, you like. The best way to become really good at it is actually to want it. And if you don't want it, you've got to stop and say, why am I doing this? Now, that may bother some people's parents that, oh my God, my kid just came back and said, I don't want to do this. But at the end of the day, you will become really good at something if you really want to do it. IIT, BHU, and BHU broadly is already known as one of the best universities in the country. So I don't think there's more of an aspiration beyond that. But I think what would be, my aspiration would be for the institute and for the university is, I think we still need more resources. When I look at the universities in the West and the facilities that they provide, compare that to many of our great universities in the country, I think as a country, we need to invest more in the infrastructure around education, because that is what is going to allow us to become the knowledge country of the world, which we're slowly and steadily becoming. And I think we should not be constraining the creativity, the innovation, and the learning of our youth by not actually investing aggressively in that. So that's my aspiration, that the university and the institute would continue to invest in infrastructure, allowing young people to do better and better.